Good evening, everybody. Is my mic on? Yeah, you can hear me. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. I appreciate you guys coming out to hear about our mission service. Normally, Jared would be handling this service, but he is not feeling well today. So I guess it's just we're going to go with it, and we're going to make it happen. So that's what's going to do. So a little bit of how this evening is going to go, so you guys kind of know a little bit what's going on. We'll kind of introduce the service, and then we'll just play a short video, like a 9-minute video that we had set up to kind of lay out what we did and kind of different things that Aaron put together. And then past that, we're going to have everybody come up in the groups that they worked. So the first group that'll come up will be administration, which they'll explain a little bit what they did and how they did it. And then we'll have construction come up, and then we'll have tutoring come up, and then we'll have VBS come up, and then we'll close out the service from there with a couple of stories. So each person is going to share a story about their experience and a little bit what they did. And then also, at the end of each group, if you have any questions, we're going to open it up. If you guys have any questions for that specific group, you're welcome to ask them at that time. Instead of waiting until the end and pulling everybody back up on stage, we'll just do that. So if you think of something while they're talking, we wanted to make sure that we had time for you guys to ask any questions that you have, because the stories that we tell may not answer any questions that you had. So we want to make sure that you have time for that. With that being said, I'll give a little bit of a rundown of kind of how our trip went, kind of what the day-to-day looked like. So whenever we started, obviously we had 23 people that went, including myself, which is a sizable group. We left from the Fort Wayne airport, and we flew into Dallas on the way down, and then we went to Santo Domingo and the Dominican, and then they picked us up in Santo Domingo and took us to Freedom International. On the way home, we went a different route, and that story will come up a little bit later. But when we were there, Sunday was the only day that was different because we didn't do any work. We didn't have school or anything because it was Sunday. So we had a church service that morning and kind of a beach day and a fun day. We went down on a Saturday, and then Sunday we kind of had a fun day. Starting Monday, they had different things that we could choose from. There was a sign-up sheet every night that you could select, and they said once you picked, unless there was an issue, they wanted you to kind of sign up for the same thing because then you didn't have to be retrained and any of that. So you could either choose in the morning, you could choose between tutoring or construction. And tutoring was whenever you would go to their school, which is in the complex that we stayed in, and you would be with the English teacher that would be in the front. They would teach a concept, and then we would have 1 to 2, sometimes 3 students that we would work on that concept. We had a game that we had to play, or we had something we had to go over with them, and we worked through that. Some of the groups had younger kids, some of the groups had older kids. We did that for half a day, or you could do construction. And then in the afternoon, you could either continue doing construction, or you could work and do VBS, where you would go as a group, you would get on a bus, and you would drive out to a town out there, and they would just literally perform a VBS in the church that was inside that little village. Batey, I think is what they called them. So we would go out and do that in the afternoon, or you could continue to do construction. There was an administration, they had sponsorship, and they had a library group that did that, a small group that did do that as well. And Jill and Aaron will kind of explain that a little bit better, what they did. They could do that, was it in the morning and the afternoon? Most days you could do morning and afternoon, okay. So we kind of rolled with that every day, and then every evening we would get together as a group because we were not the only group there. There were like 60-some people that were there, and we were only 23 of them. So we were there to be with the other groups. We kind of had to stay with them, and we did a bunch of different things, so that was exciting too. With that being said, I think it's appropriate. We'll play the video. That way you guys can kind of get a feel for how the trip went, and then we'll just kind of have the groups come up one at a time. And then after the group is done speaking, you're welcome to ask them any questions that you'd have, and then we'll continue with the next group. So enjoy the video.
Like pull them out. Oh my God. watching your video.
No, you're not.
My feet are frozen on this middle ground. The water's warm here, but the fire's gone out. I played it safe for so long, the passion left. Turns out safe is just another word for regret. So I step to the edge and I take a deep breath. We're all down to live, but we're all scared to death. And this is the part where my head tells my heart it should turn back around, but there's no turning back now. I'm going all in, head first to the deep end. I hear you calling, and this time the fear won't win. I'm going all in. I believe that one day I will see your kingdom come, and I wanna hear you say, welcome home, my child, well done. So I step to the edge and I take a deep breath. I'm not turning back around, 'cause there's no turning back now. I'm going all in, head first to the deep end. I hear you calling, and this time the fear won't win. I'm going all in. I'm all in, I'm all in, all in. I'm all in, I'm going all in. I'm all in, I'm all in, all in. I'm all in, I'm all in. All to you, Jesus, I freely give. As long as there's breath in these lungs, I will live. With reckless abandon, my heart in your hands, I surrender it all. I'm going all in. I'm going all in. I'm going all in, head first to the deep end. I'm going all in. I hear you calling, and this time the fear won't win. I'm going all in. I'm all in, I'm all in, all in. I'm all in, I'm going all in. I'm all in, I'm all in, all in. I'm all in, I'm all in. I believe that one day I will see your kingdom come, and I wanna hear you say, welcome home, my child, well done.
Your love is like radiant diamonds bursting inside us. We cannot contain. Your love will surely come find us like blazing wildfire, singing your name. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the skies. These hallelujahs be multiplied. of this, like radiant diamond bursting inside us. We cannot contain. Your love will surely combine like blazing wildfire, singing your name. God of mercy, sweet love of mine.
Melodies in my heart, making melodies in my heart to the King of Kings. Sounds up, elbows back, knees in, making.
These hallelujah be multiplied. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your desire. May this offering stretch across the sky. These hallelujah be multiplied. These hallelujah be multiplied. Like blazing wildfire, singing your name.
Okay, hopefully you enjoyed that video. That was a pretty exciting video. Kind of summarized things, kind of what we did throughout the week. It was very different. If you noticed, everybody there looked really hot because it was really hot, and there was no air conditioning at all ever. So we just kind of rolled with being a little warm all the time. So that was pretty exciting. So let's go ahead and have the administration and sponsorship people come up. Erin's coming up. She was doing the video, so she'll be up here shortly. I think what I'm going to have every group do, just so we kind of have consistency, is everybody will just say who they are, a little bit of what they did, kind of what their job. Yeah, don't fall off the stool. A little bit of what their job was, kind of what they did, and then do like their rose and thorn, what you liked most about what you liked least, and then you can tell your story, okay? Does that sound good? Jill, you want to go first? Okay. Okay, Erin, you go first. I'll go last.
Okay. Okay, so I'm Erin Rupp. I was mostly in sponsorship. My sister actually, that's like her job there. She leads up the sponsorship, makes sure that every kid in the school is sponsored by somebody here to go. They do have the parents of the kids there Each parent has to pay for the kid to go to school just so they feel like it's a priority, but they only have to pay, I think it's like $12 a year. So the sponsorships back here, they pay the rest of for the kid to go to school, for the uniform, for the food. So Kristen makes sure that all of them have a sponsor. Me and Jill got to work with the sponsorship. They write letters back to the people here, keep a good communication. So me and Jill were able to help the pre-K kids write letters back to their sponsors here in the United States. Which, as a pre-K, it's a lot of just coloring and like, oh, what did you draw? Because we have no idea what it is, and they usually tell us. So it was so fun just connecting with those kids, learning a few different words in Spanish that I did not know before. We got to just really communicate with them, and I actually got the opportunity to sponsor, our family is able to sponsor a child there that is in the pre-K, and I was actually able to meet him in person, and it was just so cool. I was able to actually go out to his village as well and just see where he lives, everyday life, and it just blew my mind how fortunate we are with what we have, because they have so little. I love the video that was on of the little boy rolling the tire down the dirt road, because they just use what they have. So I don't know, so many things were so good. I mean, my rose of the week was I finally got to meet in person my nephews that Kristen and Gabe are adopting, and that was amazing. They're so cool. They were actually in that school, and both of their parents passed away, and so Kristen and Gabe are almost finally done with the adoption process, and hopefully they'll be able to come here soon. So that was definitely my rose. My thorn is just, I think just being out in the villages, you see how much they don't have. There was a little boy while we were there that we were walking through the villages, and we saw him sitting by his house, and as you saw their houses on there, they're like a 10 by 10 little shack, and that's sometimes is a whole family, sometimes two families. And we were looking at him, and we could tell something was wrong. He had what we thought was a Band-Aid around his finger, but as we got closer, it was his finger, and it was so infected that it was just terrible. And so they said, they would send out some help, but he'll probably lose that finger. We also were doing Bible school, and we saw a little boy taken away in a little coffin because he had passed away. So just the things that we're so fortunate to have medical care. And sorry, I went over my time, so I should pass it on.
You're fine. I also did sponsorship in the morning with Aaron, so we got to help 3- and 4-year-olds color pictures and trace their names. So I learned new Spanish phrases like trazar las letras, trace the letters, and we would tell them tu color and color, and we would quiz them on their colors when we were waiting for them to leave when they were done. So that was kind of fun to pick up a little Spanish. Most everybody else was not allowed to speak Spanish with kids. Our kids didn't really speak English, so it was a little different. I also worked in the library a couple afternoons. So their library there, they have actually a really nice library. It's not massive, but it's a good size for what I would have expected from the school. And they are getting everything into an online card catalog. So what I would do is input books for a couple hours in the afternoon into the card catalog, which for me is a wonderful thing. I got to sit alone in a room with nobody around me in the quiet and just input things into computers. So that was a good time. Probably my least favorite thing about the trip was just the heat. It was hot. It was very hot. I didn't really enjoy going out to VBS's because it was so hot. I was just overwhelmed with heat and couldn't really function, unfortunately. But I did enjoy our time working with the kids, and I did enjoy our time on campus, and it was well worth it and a lot of fun.
That was Jill Baker. My name's Josh. Hi. Just so I don't really fit here. I didn't do administration, but I didn't really fit anywhere else, so they just told me to come up here. I actually did, not the whole week, but partially I did their bus garage. So they had a pavilion kind of out in the back where they do all the work on all their vehicles. So that was my job sometimes. Now, we had Doug Habager go on the trip with us, too. Now, he was there almost every time. I asked everybody in our group to go to VBS one time in one afternoon. That way they weren't stuck in their one job. That way they could experience what life was like outside. So he went and did that, and he said, I'm glad I did that, but I'm ready to go back to the bus garage. So we went back to the bus garage. So what we did while I was there is they have a lot of buses, right? Because they go to 3 different, this time, because we had so many people, they went to 3 different VBSs with 3 different buses. They had to pick us up from Santo Domingo. They also had to pick up a group from Punta Cana when we flew in and flew out. So they have a lot of buses. Now, where do these buses come from? Largely us, Indiana. We had a Southern Wells bus down there. We had a Rush County bus down there. There were a bunch of different buses that were actually really close. The buses are cheap. Getting them to the Dominican is very expensive. So they can buy the buses here, very cheap. They can get them to the Dominican. That costs quite a bit. But then they have to fix the buses because the roads are not good. So there was one time when they said they were driving, this wasn't when we were there, they were driving out and they called back and they said, our bus is broken. They said, okay, drive it back. It won't move. Well, found out that the rear axle had literally broken and the axle had just come out and it wouldn't move. So they had to take plate steel out there and shove the axle back together, weld it together, and drive it like 5 miles per hour down the road to get it back so that they could put a new axle. You don't buy new parts, you find used parts. That's what you do. And so basically their explanation is it costs a lot to drive because diesel is very expensive there, but it also costs a lot if you want to get there quickly. Because if you get there quickly, you hit lots of bumps and lots of things break. So I would work there with Doug, and we did a lot of working on buses. We just did some servicing on the buses, kind of checked them over, make sure that they're going to make the trip safely because, like I said, things just kind of break here and there. So that was a pretty exciting thing to do. But yeah, so we have pretty much covered ours. If anybody has any questions about what we did or anything like that, you're welcome to ask that question. I guess Jenna's walking around with a mic. If anybody has any, no pressure. We can always move on. But if anybody wants to ask a question, any of us 3, you're welcome to do that now. Oh, everybody's good, but Aaron has one more thing to say.
And if you do want to sponsor a child, there are still kids to sponsor, so there's my little input. So if you're going to sponsor, talk to me and I'll hook you up.
Krista would be proud of you, Aaron. All right, so that's all we got for administration. Thank you, ladies. You guys can go ahead and head down. If I could have, who was next? Construction? If I could have construction come up and tell, oh, I forgot to tell you my rose and thorn. My rose was, we were under a covered area, pavilion. That was kind of nice. But my thorn was, every time I changed a filter, I got oil and fuel all over myself. So that wasn't any fun. Because you stunk and you can't do laundry there, so you just had to live with it. But yeah, so that was my rose and thorn. All right, just a reminder, if you guys could introduce who you are, kind of what you did, and at some point your rose and thorn, and then if you have a story, go ahead and share it.
Well, if you don't know me, I'm Daniel Rupp, and I like constructions. Some of our jobs were laying block, carrying cement and mortar. Others were breaking brick. And it was very hot, but like for me, I didn't really mind it. A lot of people whine about it, but I was like, I don't notice it as much. One of my rows was they had rice every day. Like 90% of the time we had rice. And it's like they cooked it a different way every time. But sometimes you think that it doesn't taste good because it looks weird. But eventually it just turns out very delicious. And some people got tired of rice every day, so I didn't. My thorn was that I had I usually run out of water very fast, and I'm a person that would sweat a lot. So once our containers were empty, our water containers were empty, and we didn't have any more in the buckets, we had to go all the way down the stairs to get more, and that's not always fun. So, and a story that I have is we have to put mud or slash mortar up into plates so they can lay block. Well, I did that for part of the time, and for me, I was short for that, so then I was struggling to do that. And at the same time, the mortar didn't stick to the shovel, so when I raised it over my head, it came down over my face. So then, like, for most of that day, my teeth felt gritty, and I had to brush my teeth multiple times to get that out. And that's all.
My name's Jacob Lisey. I was one of the 4 Liseys that went. It was me, my wife, and 2 of our kids. I did construction every day except for one afternoon. Most of the pictures in the video of construction seemed like they were pouring concrete, but we actually only poured concrete on Friday morning. Erin kind of had her own thing going on every day, and Friday was just kind of the day that she was available to take pictures. But these guys laid block almost every day, and that's hard work. If you saw in the video, they had this little pulley set up, and you had to reach out over the edge and grab the bucket, and that's how they got the block up to those levels too. So these guys laid block just about every day. I was kind of in my own little world. I told them I've done concrete before, so they stuck me up on top of the 3rd story by myself. Sometimes Braden was there, sometimes Daniel was there, and we tied steel for 3 days pretty much. That's what we did until Friday, and then we poured concrete. I guess I'll talk a little bit about the facilities down there because I'm not sure anybody else will. Everything down there, they're off-grid, so they're all solar powered. So on top of all the buildings, there were solar panels, and they had 2 classrooms that were full of just batteries. So you would store your power during the day, and you would pull off of the batteries at night. So if they ran fans too long at night, you were done with power until the next day. So without electricity, there also wasn't hot water. They had big black water tanks on top of the roof, and that's where you got your hot water. If the sun wasn't very sunny that day, your water wasn't very hot. So it made showers quick and cold, which sometimes was good, sometimes wasn't. So I guess that was my week.
I started out doing construction both sessions the very first day, but so many were signed up to do construction in the mornings that I kind of switched and went. I'll talk a little bit later about being part of tutoring then in the mornings. In the afternoons, they didn't have very many people. So I specifically did construction in the afternoons. I brought a little visual aid along. You got used to swinging one of these and putting the mud on there and how to sling it and put it along the edge of the block and how to use the backside of it and do kind of the same thing. And we used these quite a bit, and all of us got some action in doing that part of it, laying block. And we did, like Jacob was saying, we did a lot of block laying and working as a team with someone beside you and putting that thing into place and sitting it down. And it was hot, but you took your water breaks. Probably the biggest, I would call it the thorn for me, wasn't really during construction, but it was when you always had to have your water bottle, but you didn't drink. You had to get your water from, they had ice and water on tables, and you get your water from there. And you also had to have that if you wanted to go brush your teeth, because you didn't want to be drinking or drinking the water that was from their regular spigots. So that was probably the biggest thing as far as that. But I enjoyed helping, learning how to do some of the construction with them and having kind of a crash course in putting mortar for block.
My name's Braden Lisey, and I also did construction. I'm pretty sure I'm 5 mornings and then 2 afternoons. At first, I was laying block, but the cinder blocks are very heavy whenever you lug them over your shoulder, so I got put with my dad, and we were just bending rebar and tying it, and then the very last day, we spent getting soaked in concrete. And, yeah. And then I think my least favorite part was that they have tarantulas there, and they are very big and somewhat poisonous. And then I think my favorite part was just working the construction there, because I was helping build a school where there's not much education there. So, yeah.
Unlike him, holding a tarantula was like one of the best things that could ever happen to me. So, just to let you know, he's against that, I'm for it.
So the tarantula story is, I was talking to the guy who was in charge of the bus garage, and they're missionaries, so their kids and everything are there. A lot of times the missionary kids just go to school there too, and they might supplement depending upon their age. But we were talking about kind of what they did in their free time, and he's like, oh yeah, they catch tarantulas. And I'm not kidding you. That same day, earlier in the day, our group is talking about how terrified they would be if they found a tarantula, because they said there's tarantulas down there. And I'm like, can you bring it? They're like, yeah. So they went back and got it, and they brought it for everybody to hold. So that's what you saw. They weren't just like walking around. But they told me how to look for them, and most of the people know this now. They were not much further from where we sleep than what we wanted them to be. We'll just say that. But anyway, does anybody have any questions for those who did construction? If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to answer or ask those questions now, and I'll direct it to whoever you want to ask.
Does everybody that's working with you on construction speak English?
Zero. No.
We had, like Josh said, 60 people there, 60 white folk, I guess. There was probably 20 of us on construction one morning, and there was probably double that, maybe 20 to 30 locals that they had that they would bring in just about every day, just because each year they have to add a classroom to be able to add that year of kid in, right? So right now they're K through 8. Well, before they can move the 8th graders up to 9th grade, they got to have somewhere to put them. So they're always building another classroom. And it takes so long to do that with cinder block and steel and pouring concrete that they bring in a lot of the locals. And I think they have their foreman there. There's 2 missionaries that work there full-time on construction and maintenance. And then they have one local guy that's kind of they call him their foreman, that kind of takes care of all the local guys there. But there was a lot of locals running around building all kinds of things. They have piles of cinder blocks laying everywhere, because they said they don't take loans out for anything. They don't really beg for money. It's all paid for. So the money that they get each year, they turn around and buy materials. And that's not just them, that's everybody down there. That's kind of their savings accounts. So if you have $5, you go buy $5 worth of cinder block and put out in your backyard for when you're ready to start building. So actually driving around, you'll see a lot of partially built houses, because they told us they know they can't save money. So instead of trying to save it and then build the house all at once, they buy 10 blocks here and put them together, and buy 10 there and put them together. But the school itself, they don't seem to have a problem getting material, which was kind of interesting. You would think there would be kind of a shortage like there is here, but I think because most of it is block and concrete, they don't have to import a lot. I think they can make it themselves down there.
If you would see the locals working, and they worked hard, but they're wearing a jacket and wearing a hat, big old hat, and long pants, and thought, wow, aren't they hot? Well, they'd rather be sweaty than have the hot sun on their skin. So they were probably doing it smarter than we were, but us thinking we're trying to wear the least we can and still be comfortable, but they covered themselves. Pretty interesting.
Any other questions? So for the video, the question was, were they building classrooms, or were they working on apartments, or what were they building?
The part we were working on were classrooms, but like farther away from the school, they had apartments for people that work there and stuff. So they built both, but the part we were working on were classrooms.
They did have a local crew there, though, that were building the apartments out back. They had them all built, and they were putting the stucco on them.
Any other questions? So just one thing I want to reiterate that Jacob did say that I thought was really cool is Freedom International does not believe in taking out a loan. They believe in using what God has given them. So their biggest thing is we spend what we get. So they don't build a classroom until they have enough money and enough materials to build the classroom. So they had all the material. The only thing they had to bring in was when they pour a floor, they bring in a big pumper truck like we would see here, and they bring them in. They said they had another one, and they said that they'd be here at a time, but they were kind of wishy-washy within the hour, and when you're working with concrete, you don't have time. It's got to come, and it's got to come at that right time. So they ended up going with a different company. So I thought that was pretty cool that they only spend what they get. So I thought that was pretty neat. Okay, if there's no other questions, you guys are relieved. Yeah, I know. Jacob's really excited. He loved being up here to talk about that. Next is tutoring. Am I correct? Okay, so those who are going to talk about tutoring will come up and do that. And Aaron, can you, whenever they say, can you play that video? Okay, or right now. They will explain what you just heard in just a second.
I'm going to fall off these benches. Ugh. Okay, or a stool. Okay. So we did VBS, or not VBS, tutoring, that's what we're talking about. And tutoring happened in the morning. So like their primary function down there is school. It is a school system. And kids would come in the morning and they would eat breakfast at the school facility. So after the kids got picked up from the buses, every morning we had to set up like 60 tables. And we also helped serve or got the dishes around and the drinks around for the students who were going to be coming in for school that day. You think, wow, why is it in the summer that they're still going to school? Well, down in the Dominican, the government had actually mandated that they go an additional 6 weeks for half days. And so during this time, you think about kids who go to summer school here. Nobody really wants to be in summer school. The kids down there were the exact same. They really didn't want to be in summer classes. Their days were from 8 to noon, and we taught their English class, or we helped tutored in their English class. Freedom International had an internship program, and they had interns, student interns, come down and teach the English class. And then we were the tutors or the volunteers that supported what these student teachers were teaching the students. So they would teach a concept, and we would maybe have 5 or 10 minutes with that student teaching the concept. I was with 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. And every class period, we were with the same student teacher, and you saw the same kids every single day. So we had a chance to actually get to know some of these kids. In the classroom as well, there was a missionary. So every student teacher was paired with a missionary. The missionary was there to help support with discipline. And their philosophy on discipline is love is discipline. And so if we had any problems with our students, or if we were having a hard time engaging with them, we could just raise our hand, and the missionary was right there by our side through the process helping us. Not all of the kids spoke very good English. The younger kids, in fact, didn't really speak a lot of English, if any at all. So sometimes it was very difficult and challenging to interact and engage with the students while trying to teach with them. Because it was an English class, we were not allowed to speak any Spanish. So even if we knew Spanish, we weren't supposed to. And one of the concepts that we taught on was they had 4 different areas that they covered. They covered U.S. geography. They learned about a U.S. region and a U.S. state. They watched a video. We would talk about it. They talked about English, nouns and pronouns and verbs and all that fun stuff. And then we had a time of worship with the kids where we were interacting with the kids through song. We have an example of that song. We won't play the whole song for you, but just to give you guys an idea of kind of what we did with the kids in the class. Go ahead, Aaron.
Before the earth was made, you knew my life, my name. Before the waters roared, you knew who I would be. And to show us who you are, you formed the moon and stars, all the world around us that we see. 'Cause by your word, you made day and night, and by your breath, brought us all to light. You made everything, and you made me, and everything that you have made is for your glory. You made everything, and you made me. The breath I breathe, the song I sing, is for your glory.
Thank you, Aaron. So that was just to give you a little bit of an idea. We got up, we actually danced with the kids. Sometimes you had to move their arms for them because they didn't want to do it. But by the end of the week, we sang that song every day. We did the dance every day. And eventually, they got up and they loved it. Another portion of our classroom was scripture memorization. And we focused on one verse the entire week. And if at the end of the week, if our students could have it memorized and repeat it back to us, they were able to get a treat. And their treats down there was a piece of candy. And to them, or a sticker, they love that stuff. So I would say my rose for the trip was just getting to, I did VBS as well, but going out into the villages and seeing how the kids live, how simple their lives are, I liked seeing that. And it just puts things into a little bit more perspective for us here in the States. And then my thorn would have been the climate, just the humidity, the weather down there. There's just no relief from the heat. So.
Good. Oh, I'm Jenna. It's Jenna. She did a fantastic job outlining what we did every day, so I don't have to talk about any of that. Thank you. I'll start with my rose and thorn. My rose, I spoke a few Sunday mornings ago, so I'll try to keep mine short. So definitely Patricia, she was a pre-K kid that we seen going out to the Batey, and we just fell in love with her. And she always would spot me and Emma out, and that's who we played with. We certainly didn't try to exclude any other kids, but she was just special to us. My thorn, unlike Daniel, is rice every day. They did not make it differently every single time. It was pretty much the same every single time. So you had rice, or you had like pancakes and eggs for breakfast. So it was the same meals. And for me, who eats a lot of different things, that was definitely my thorn. With the spiders, Braden, somebody said that some of them were poisonous. I don't know that there were poisonous tarantulas there. I know that if they bit you, there was some poison, but it was like, I asked him before I held it. I wanted to be very sure, and I was like, "What will happen if he bites me?" And he said that it would feel like you got stung by a wasp. So I was willing to take that risk. And, if you get stung by a wasp, it's not that bad, like when you're a little kid. So I went for it. And the bigger ones are pretty docile, and they don't mess with you. The little ones, they said if you hold a little one and they bite you, they can't control their venom. So if they bite you, they're going to give you all they got, and then you might be hurting pretty bad. So also, Jenna talked about how we one thing that I've got out of this is I'm trying to learn Spanish. I'm using an app on my phone that's it is what it is. I'm definitely learning a lot, and I'm a month into it. I work on it every single day. But she said we weren't allowed to speak Spanish in the classroom during tutoring, because they want the kids to hear English, even if they don't quite understand. They want to hear the English words, and but for me, I just feel like I could have done better if I could have spoke some to them to explain to them better or make them understand. And they were speaking to me in Spanish, so I had no idea what they were saying. But I had first and second graders, so I guess that's like 7, 8, 9, I don't know, something in that area. But I had 6 or 7 students. There were 4 classes a day. Yeah, so we sang this song 4 times a day, every single day. But 2 of my students were great. Like, they could speak perfect English to me. Not perfect, but very good English to me. And I could talk to them, and they knew what I was talking about. This one question here says, what was something that filled your cup while on your trip? And Jenna spoke on this, is just going out to the villages. These kids have nothing, but they're just so happy. They're, with whatever they've got, they're happy with. And, kids here, my own kids, are, mad if they can't be on their iPad for 4 hours a day. And, these kids get a piece of candy and they're just over the moon. So the perspective, just the gratefulness that I have for the things that we have, is what I took away for sure.
Like I said, I started out with construction, but then I switched the second morning to doing in the classroom with tutoring. And I had one student each session, 2 first grade boys, then 2 second grade boys. So I kind of went through the second day what most of them did the first day. They didn't really want to be there, and they really didn't want to listen to you. Now, it wasn't with everyone. I had one boy in particular that he just didn't want to sit and listen the very first day. And the second day, he didn't even come and sit with me. He went and sat with someone with 2 people, so there was 3 of them. But like I said, the missionary said, you go back over there where you were. And he kind of moped around for a while. But once we got to that song, he got into doing the motions of the song. And by the end of the week, like I said, I had 4 boys, and there was 2 of the 4 that were there to learn. And one in particular, he was a joy to work with the whole time. I mean, he wanted to learn the verse. He wanted to learn he had those pronouns right down the line, and he wanted to do them and show that he could do them. They love to play rock, paper, scissors. So they wanted to get through it so they could play a game with you. And they'll do that with you and have fun doing it. And I showed them how to do the hand slap game because they hadn't learned that one. So that was kind of fun for me. But what was probably my Rose and Thorn, it's kind of the same kid because I enjoyed doing the tutoring, but the kid that I had second, I think that was Jose. He's the one that really didn't want to be there. But those last 2 days, not only did he warm up to me, but he's the one that jumped up in my arms and wanted a picture with me when we were done. And all of them wanted to get a picture with the group, but that was neat that the kid that didn't want to be there did want to and learn some things. And it was fun to be a part of that just for the week that we were there.
Does anybody have any questions? Jody has a mic if you want to talk into it. Otherwise, I can just yell out the question again in the microphone. Anybody have any questions? No, you can go, Jody. It's okay. If they don't want to wait on you, it's all right. Nope, you can go. No, I'm just kidding. Jumping Jody right there. Does anybody have any questions for those that tutored? Is it normal for them to teach the kids English?
Is it a goal? I mean, I guess, but I mean, like the government requires they have to have some English. But what I thought was interesting was, this was like it was an intern. It was an intern that was teaching these kids, and like the girl in our class certainly had no. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't think she was in college for teaching or anything. She was just like just out of high school or something. No idea. She just had a page to go off of and was teaching English. You know what I mean? So I thought that was interesting.
Nothing. Just that Freedom International does require the students to go through the English teaching course or the English. And so I think for Freedom, they want the kids to be really diverse by the time that they exit school. And similar here, they really only have to go until they're in 8th grade in the Dominican, and then after that, it's added bonus for that.
The other thing was I had first and second grade. My first 2 classes were first, and then the second 2 classes were second grade, but it was the same class. It was the same exact thing. It wasn't like we switched to a little harder stuff for the second graders. They were learning the same pronouns. So I'm not quite sure how that works. I guess they learned the same thing for a couple of years, but I don't know. Was your class similar? Did you guys learn the same thing every?
Yeah, so the activity might have been a little bit more difficult, but the content, the material content was the same. And by the time you got up to some of the 6th graders, some of them could speak a lot better English. I had one girl who was very fluent in English, and she would just sit there and have a conversation with me. But on the other end, I had other kids who knew like 10 to 20 words, but.
So to piggyback on that, sorry, just one second. To piggyback on that, I did ask them a little bit kind of like, is this how school normally goes? And our missionary said, not exactly, because it is summer school. Because of COVID, they kind of shut down. They started really late, so then they were ending late, so only requiring a half a day. And they knew that we were coming. So they kind of scheduled their school year to kind of match what the interns and what we would be doing for that day. So that wouldn't have been necessarily what we would consider a normal day of school, but they would have required English. She did prep us before, and she said, just so you know, they only speak English here. They go home, they don't speak English. They go to town, they go to the city, they do not speak English. So she said it's a process. You want to speak as much English as you can because this is the only place they're going to get it. All right, and there was another question. Go ahead. What is one thing God taught us through this trip?
I would say for me, it's less is more. Just seeing, what they don't have over there, and the fact that they can still be joyful in the things that they do have. That's what God was speaking through to me, was less is more.
Definitely that. That and partly just doing more myself here to reach people myself. And like they're trying to reach all these school kids and disciple to them. So what I wanted, or what I got from it, was just to do that here myself.
They told us a little bit about the history of Freedom International, and it's what I got out of it was what they have accomplished, the missionaries themselves, what they're willing to do with the talents that they have. Maybe it is just volunteering to be the teacher, but even the construction part of it, what they're willing to do. They could be making money here in the States doing construction, but they're doing it there for the Lord. I was just astounded at their effort and how they would just give their time and effort for such an endeavor that they are doing, and that's what impressed me the most. Yep.
Any other questions for the? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Are those children only children of people that work for the sugarcane factory?
Okay. The question was: are the children that attend the school only the children of those who work for the sugarcane factory? Is that correct? Okay.
So no, there was one village that was solely made up of the sugarcane workers, but it's diverse. We were told that there were both Dominicans and Haitians that do attend the school, and actually the majority of the students that attend are actually Haitians, but there's kind of a rival, I guess, between the Dominicans and the Haitians. So if they're Haitians, they won't say that they're Haitians. But no, it's a mix.
So you're saying that you guys tutored them in English, but all of their other courses are taught in their native language?
So
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask them, where do you get materials? Where do they use textbooks and workbooks and...
So the question was, do we teach them in English in our tutoring class, but do they speak English in the other classes or their native language? And then also, as a result of that, where do we get our materials for the English class?
So I'll start with the materials first. The materials, they do have specific like Dominican classes that they do have, that the government mandates that they do take. And then there are some added classes. I don't know exactly what those are, but I mean, it's standard, math. They would have, a geography of the Dominican. They would have a history class over the Dominican. It would be like our standard topics. They do have like some Bible application type classes as well. And then in their other classes, they do speak Spanish. If the missionaries in there, the missionaries are speaking Spanish to the children as well. So I'm sure they mix in some English. We weren't there for the other classes, but in this particular instance was the English that they got. I'm sorry. You do also have to remember that there are summer groups coming in and out all summer, so they do get English from the other groups that are coming in as well.
On a normal day, like through the regular school year, their mornings are all in English, and then their afternoons are all in Spanish.
There you go. There's our resident expert right there. But I know a lot of the materials that we used whenever we were tutoring, there wasn't stuff that was handed out. It would have been something like you would have had a paper, a laminated sheet to write on, and then they give that back. So they were very resourceful with what they had. A lot of the classroom stuff too, the desks and stuff are way too expensive to purchase in the Dominican. So yet again, they buy it here in the States. They'll buy a school remodels. They'll buy the classroom for next to nothing. and then they have to get it there, which is expensive, but it's way cheaper than just buying new desks and stuff in the Dominican. So the desks look a little familiar to some of us, I'm guessing, but any other questions for the tutoring? What kind of wages do they make in the Dominican? Does anybody know the answer? Go ahead.
Doing what? Like the sugar cane? Yes, I'm not sure. I'm not sure on that. I know that the sugar cane guys made like 10 or 12 bucks a day. So, or what it averaged it of. I would say it's pretty close to that. I don't know what that is in pesos, but
Yeah, we got off the plane and we went to Burger King in the airport, and the meal was like $852. We're like, what is that in American money? Anyway, the sugarcane individuals, the ones who work sugarcane, do not get paid very much at all. They go out and hand do it, and they're wanting more money. But as you know, for businesses, they have to decide, is it worth paying them more, or is it worth going to some sort of mechanized culture? So they're trying to balance that. And what's worth it and what's not worth it. But Jacob has something too. Look at that.
I talked with Gabe quite a bit while we were there, asking him like a lot of these type of questions, and he said a lot of Haitians will actually come over and cut sugarcane because the Dominicans don't want to do it because that's looked down upon. And he said they've actually got lawyers that are coming in and trying to convince these sugarcane cutters that they need to be getting paid more. But he said the problem is when one person steps up and they try to voice their rights, the sugarcane company actually mechanizes, like Josh said. They ship all the Haitians home and bring in machines to do all the work. So Gabe was saying it's almost like involuntary slavery, because if they speak up and try to make more money at a decent rate, they just get shipped back to Haiti. I'm done.
Thanks, Jacob. There was another question I heard. What was the other question? Yeah. Right. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Matt. That was something that they did mention. They said they chose the school because not only could they impress upon them for multiple days, for multiple hours, which was the best way they could reach the kids, that would impress generations of fruit there. So that is correct. They did mention that. But yeah, so that was pretty good. Any other questions? Oh, Greg's got something.
They did say that they're going to start this next school year with their first 9th grade class, so they'll have a freshman class, and they don't lose a lot of students, but they've had the grade school up to now the first, underclassmen class, but they will eventually, the plan is to have, all across the board, have a graduating class of seniors. But they just got to work it, like I said, with classrooms. It all works together in a big system that's, God has a plan, that they will have a graduating class that has been through their program from start to finish. It's pretty neat.
Any other questions for the tutoring? Okay, tutors, you can go ahead down. We have one more for VBS. Whoever's talking about VBS, if you could come up. One thing I wanted to talk about tutoring as we're switching, they told us a story before we tutored. They said there was a teacher who was hired by the state. It was a state-run school and everything. They would come and they would teach the students. So his classroom, he would unlock the gate, the kids would come in, and he would lay in a hammock for hours. And then whenever school was over, he'd get up out of the hammock, he'd unlock the gate, send the kids out, and then the next class would come in, and he'd go back and lay in the hammock and take a nap. And so the kids loved it at first, but then it just became total chaos, right? So they ended up, you would think, okay, so they found out that teacher is bad, so they would fire him. Well, the way the government's very bureaucratic, like other places, and what they did is they promoted him to get him out of the position. So he actually moved up so they could bring somebody else in. The training there is one of the worst. The Dominican school system is ranked one of the worst school systems in the area. I mean, it's not very good. So the Freedom International people were saying they actually have to train the teachers who come in. They train them so that they can teach their class better, and then the government offers to pay them more if they go to their school, so then they promptly leave. So they train them, then they leave, and then they have to get more in. So there is a need there for sure. All right, so we're going to move to VBS. So once again, if you guys could say who you are, and if you have a rose and a thorn, and then whatever you would like to share.
My name is Mackenzie, and what I learned at VBS is that the Dominicans are very happy with what they had, and we always want more and more and more. And I also noticed that they enjoy answering the questions and playing the games. And while I was there, I really loved catching frogs, and they would come out at night, and I would catch them and play with them. And then there was also really big spiders, but I didn't touch them.
You failed to mention that you threw a frog at me. Just along with tutoring, I tutored as well. I met this little girl, her name was Amalia. The first day she came in, she just started bawling. She did not want to see me, so I say that I made her cry. I didn't, though. I was reassured of that. But the village we went to the first day, it was called Campiña, and I went and I saw her right away, and she did not want to see me. There was a intern there, and she just ran right to him, and she told him, she's like, I don't like her. I don't like her. And I was like, oh, okay. But after that, she ran right to me after that every day. The next day, it was perfectly fine. Nothing had ever even happened. So I thought that was cool. I loved going, and I didn't even want to go to any other villages. I just was like, can we just stay at this one? That sounds really bad, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. But a thorn for me was, I didn't mind the hot, which sounds really weird, but I'm allergic to mosquitoes, and they were really bad, so they would swell up on my legs, so that wasn't fun. And my rose was probably just seeing, I saw a lot of people grow, even adults, and I thought it was amazing to see how people reacted there. I made new friendships with Jody. I'd never talked to her before, and now we're besties. We played euchre a bunch, and we started a band while we were there too. We don't have a name yet, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
So I'll start with my thorn. At the very beginning of the video, Aaron kind of made a jab at me. So my thorn was the bugs. They were very big, like the cockroach. I found a cockroach under my bed, like big, and they were in the shower. So every time you take a shower, you'd have to open the curtain and look all over, up and down. There were always spiders, little ones, but you had to check for the big ones that could eat you. So my thorn was the bugs. So they thought it was very funny to come behind me and tickle my leg or something, and it would scare me. So that was a week-long running joke that was not funny. So that's my thorn. But real quick, we people have been mentioning the rice, and what was really neat down there was that they used everything. So when we would eat, one day we had cookouts, so we had hamburgers and hot dogs. The next day for breakfast, we had French toast made out of hot dog buns. We had garlic bread made out of hot dog buns for one meal, and then the hot dogs were sliced on salad, and then they threw the salad on the rice. So they used everything. So whatever we had for lunch or supper one day ended up somehow in our meal the next day and the next until it was gone. So that was really neat how they didn't waste anything. And then our food, when we were done, we would take our plates and we would scrape anything, all the food. The trash went in one bin, the food went in another one because they would feed it to the pigs. Some guy had pigs, so they would feed it to the pigs. So we didn't throw away, only things that could be burned, we didn't throw away very much at all. So it was really neat. And they did that within the school as well. I know they were talking about during construction, how are we going to, it's a big, long story, I don't have time for this, but there was a need in construction and they didn't know how to fulfill it, material. And then they happened to talk to a guy who was coming down. He's like, oh, I can do that construction that they didn't know how to do. And I actually have like 600 or 700 pieces of stuff that you, okay, here he comes. It's really neat how God works.
Yes, she's not wrong. In the video, if you saw down one of the concrete hallways, there was just 4x4s going vertical up and down, just a bunch of them. Well, when they pour concrete on the third story, they have to support the second story, and then they have to support the first floor because all that weight just keeps compressing down. And they didn't know, when they started building the school, they didn't know how they were going to get those second and third stories poured till, like Jody said, one of the missionaries came down and he said, well, I have this jack system that my company back home stopped using because there's better systems out there. And I have 800 of these jacks sitting at home I can just bring with me. So that was a very big need that they had that was met by a missionary coming down.
So it was neat to hear all those stories, how their needs were fulfilled. They were answers to prayer, for sure. So VBS, the missionaries go out to all these villages for a week or 2 weeks for a VBS. And what they take is a bag of toys and coloring pages. And the kids just absolutely love it. We walk up and down these streets, and you saw pictures of the streets. They had trash on them, or the houses, you saw what they looked like. And the missionaries would speak in Spanish. They would yell to the families, the moms, and tell them that they're having VBS. And the kids would come out, and they would follow us. And we would just go up and down the roads with kids following us. And then we'd go to the church, and they'd have VBS at the church. Or one town did it in a tent that they hauled there and then cleaned up and hauled back every day. And the kids just loved it. They told the story in Spanish because the people in the villages didn't know a lot of English. So they told the story in Spanish, and they'd ask them questions, and they'd get candy if they answered the questions. So they were all about that. And then we'd have some time to play with them. We could play volleyball or baseball or whatever games, bubbles, that they wanted to play, and they just loved it. So they looked forward to us coming every day, and they really enjoyed the VBS, but they had very little for their VBS. So a lot of people said, they learned a lot about how little they have. We actually couldn't bring them toys or candy. Like, I couldn't bring them stuff. Personally, I think we could donate stuff, but I couldn't bring them stuff because it would cause a lot of arguments or fighting among the kids. So we couldn't even give them things because they had so little, and they would fight over, if you brought a toy car, they would fight over it. So we weren't allowed to do that. They did the VBS to build relationships, or they built a lot of relationships during the VBS, and then they try to get those kids to come to their school because they don't value education there, so like we do. So they try to get kids to come, but every day for school during the year they drive out there and they bring the kids to school, and then they drive them home because they wouldn't come to school otherwise. So it's really, really neat what they do out there, and they make it very, very affordable. But it is an answer to prayer how all that comes together and all that works, and all the kids that are being sponsored so they can actually get a good education and be at school. My rose was probably seeing what everybody learned, like the youth and the adults. We all kind of fell into place where we belonged. We did try new things, and sometimes like, not for me. So it was neat to see people kind of figure out, wow, I'm good at this, and I enjoy this, and I can probably use this to further the kingdom. So it was pretty neat to see people, adults and kids, kind of figure out where they belonged there. And to wrap up, I think I'm talking about the flight home. You did see the picture that we did miss our flight. We flew into, Charlotte? Did we fly into Charlotte? We flew into Charlotte, and then that was fine. And then from Charlotte, we flew to Fort Wayne, and we had an hour and 40 minutes, hour and a half to get from one flight to the other, which doesn't seem like a lot, but we were row 36 out of 36. So by the time, if you've ever flown on a plane, it takes a very long time for everybody to get off the plane. So by the time we got off the plane, we had not very much time. And then we waited in line for what? Customs? We waited in a very long line. And it moved, but it was so long. By the time we got through the line, I think our flight was leaving. So we kept hearing the announcement, last call to Fort Wayne, last call to Fort Wayne, and we're still in line. So we're like, this isn't going to happen. So we ran the whole way to the gate E from A. And it's a big airport. We missed the flight. She said, sorry, you missed the flight. And like, we got 23 people. That's a quarter of the plane. We have 23 people and they're all behind us. We promised they're coming. They're all behind us. We're just the first ones here. And she went and got the pilot, and they actually aren't legally, I think, supposed to do this, but they reopened the gate for us and we all could board and get home. So we made everybody an hour late, but they probably thought, how are we going to get 23 people on different flights home? So that was kind of an answer to prayer too, because we did not want to be stuck in an airport and make it longer yet that late at night. So we appreciate your prayers. We had a great time, learned a lot, and made it home on time. So we do appreciate everybody who was praying for us. Oh.
Also, me and my dad were the first ones in line at customs, and we were the last ones on the plane. They were the last on the plane and the first on the flight.
Go figure. One thing about VBS that I'm sorry if you guys mentioned it, that I didn't know if I heard, is they actually asked anybody who went to do VBS, they asked for 2 people to give their testimonies, and you could volunteer to do that. So you would just give a short testimony of kind of how you accepted Christ, and it was kind of up to you. And you would say a sentence at a time, and they would translate in Spanish for you. So, you just trust that the missionaries telling the truth about you, I guess. I don't know, but you had no idea. So for half the VBS, you're just sitting there and you're like just kind of smiling and nodding because there's a lot of Spanish going on, which I didn't know near enough to do anything. Did you have something to say? Oh, whenever we're done, okay. You want to talk about VBS? Oh, okay. So that was kind of what I had for that. Does anybody have any questions for VBS before we let them head off the stage? Yeah, you did good. You did good. Any questions for them? Okay. All right. VBSers, you're done. Just to kind of reiterate for what Jody had suggested with the plane, I know we've talked about a couple of times. Like, if you think that, sitting here and just praying for our group while we're over there that's all I can do. That's all I can do. That's not just all you can do. I mean, I'm telling you, the fact that we got on the plane going home, I don't know how other than God simply saying, I'm going to make it happen. I don't know how we would have gotten it. And how in the world would you get 23 people home? There's not 23 seats on the next flight, right? The other thing that I felt that God was really answering is we had at least one individual who I'm not going to name, who his name starts with Dane, was sick. He was sick down there, and he had allergies. But for those of you who do know, COVID matches pretty closely with that. So we were monitoring that very closely. And I'm telling you, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, if we can't get on that plane, we're going to have to go home, or we're going to have to come back to the mission and reschedule flights because he can't stay by himself. He'd be a minor, so I'd have to stay with him. So it's like, it is what it is. We're going to have to do that. But luckily, when we went in for our COVID test, 23 people went in, 23 people came out, and they were all clear. There was another group that rode the bus with us, and they were staying in a hotel. They were going to go fly home the very next day. We found out while we were there that the United States is lifting the requirement to test negative for COVID starting Sunday. We flew out Saturday. So we flew out less than 24 hours before the restriction would have been lifted. So I'm like, man, if we test positive, I'm going to be so mad, but we were all good. So it worked out really well. I was very grateful for that. Boone's luggage never made it. He had to go back to Fort Wayne and get it. I lost my luggage, no idea where it went. Made it back to Fort Wayne, but I didn't have it for a week. But then I ended up finding it too. They found it in the rental car parking lot because, that's where we put things. And there was nothing missing, but it was all nasty, dirty, stinky clothes. So somebody probably opened it up and was like, nope, closed it back up and left it there. So anyway, there are so many stories. There's so many things that we would have to share with you. We just simply don't have time to share all those things. I think it's important that we did this because I think it's important for us to kind of process what we did and be able to verbalize that to our church. But I have to tell you, I am so grateful for the support. I mean, I have to remind you For those of you that don't know, I required everybody who was coming on the trip to pay a deposit. Okay, so they had to pay a deposit, have a little bit of skin in the game, and then I told them, at the end, I'll let you know how much you owe. But through fundraisers, through some funds that the church was putting in from our missions fund, and then also through just offerings, people giving an offering every Sunday, the little bit that they were giving or whatever, the one-time donation. Through all of that, the whole trip, minus the deposit that I had everybody pay, it was covered financially. Absolutely covered. In fact, we even had just a little bit left over that we put back in an account for the next time we go. So I just want you guys to know, it was a God thing through and through. I don't know how else to say it. I really don't. So I want you guys to understand that this is really important. The prayers were important. The financial support was important. We had the Lises go. 4 people. Can you imagine paying the full amount for 4 people? It was over $1,700 to go on this trip. So it was a very expensive trip. So I was very grateful for that, and I think it was very important. So like I said, we have lots of stories to tell. You're welcome to talk to everybody afterwards. Ask them a question. Ask them how they felt. Ask them what God taught them from the trip. There's a lot more that they have shared with me that I know that there is that they weren't able to do so. But before we close, Erin said she has something to talk about for Gabe and Krista.
Just wanted to share a prayer request for them. Right now, all the missionaries that are down there, which I don't even know how many families it is now, several, all of them have come home for furlough. They come home every year, but Krista and Gabe have not been able to come home, except for the fact of, Ava's broken arm and all that stuff. They have not been able to come home as a family for 3 years. So it kind of sucks not seeing them. So if you could just pray that the adoption process would just, finalize so they could come home as a family just to see us. We're excited to see them, and it's hard not to. So if you could just pray for a quick finalization of the adoption, that would be awesome.
So please be praying for that as well. So with that being said, thank you, Erin. I would say we're going to conclude our mission service for tonight. If anybody doesn't have anything else to add that I'm missing, we all good? Okay. So I'll go ahead and close us in prayer, and then you will be free to go home. So let's pray. Father, I'd like to thank you for tonight. I'd like to thank you for the group of individuals that was able to go on this trip. I thank you for simply opening up schedules that we were able to find a week that 23 people from our church could go. I'd just like to thank you for giving us a church body that is able to support us financially in a way that we were financially able to go without being too much of an overbearing issue for us. I just thank you for our church body that without a doubt in my mind has been praying for this trip, has been praying before we left, while we were there, and even when we were back for the changed lives to continue changing. I just thank you for all the prayers that we received. I thank you for your hand being on this trip, for allowing us to miraculously make it home when we were supposed to. Thank you for protecting us on the way down and while we were down there and on the trip home. And I just thank you for giving us the experience that, quite honestly, we would never receive without leaving the country. Just thank you for giving us that experience. I pray that with that experience that you would cause our hearts to be different. I pray that you would cause our hearts to be changed, that we could do something for you. Whatever you're calling us to do, we know that you planned this trip for us way before we knew we were going to be on it. And we pray that you would have your will in our lives. I pray that the people who did go would be able to pour into those that were unable to go. I pray that they would feel the peace and the joy and the satisfaction that our church was able to do this. And I just pray for Freedom International. I pray that they would be able to continue to do good work for you. I know that it can be stressful at times. I know that there's a group of missionaries there that cannot physically do what they do without the interns, without the trips like ours that go down. The missionaries are so grateful. And I just thank you that you have your hand on this mission. I pray for Gabe and Krista. I pray that you would finalize this adoption process, that, red tape can really be a bear. I pray that you would just continue to hurry that process along. I pray that you would put your hand on that process so that it could end quickly, so that they could all as a family come home and enjoy the family here in the U.S. Pray that you would be with us as we travel from this place. I pray that you would give us a good week. I pray that you would change our mindset so that we're not so stuck in ourselves. I pray that you would change our mindset so that we can remember what we've done and remember to look out for those that are in need. Be with us this week. In Jesus' name, amen. I'd like to thank everybody for coming for our service that we had today. I appreciate all of your support once again. This concludes our service. You are free to go. May God bless you as you go throughout this week. I encourage you to talk to our group and find out any more stories that they may have for you. Thank you.